Hello everyone, this is Jason from Primetime Aquatics, and I am super excited to bring you a species profile on a fish I absolutely love, and that is the Pearl Gourami. If you're looking for a larger gourami, this very well may be the one for you. Let's go take a closer look. So what we're looking at here is a 55-gallon tank, and it has got some of the coolest fish that we have in the fish room. I love Pearl Gouramis. In this tank, we've got, I believe, 14 of them. In addition to that, we've also got this Aquatics heculi, that cichlid that you see there in the center. There's a few cherry barbs in here and quite a few bristlenose plecos that like to stir stuff up, and so that's why we're seeing a little bit of stuff floating around in the water as this video progresses, because they were swimming around and being all crazy. But I absolutely love this tank. I think one of the things that stands out about Pearl Gouramis has to be their color. Of all the gouramis out there, I believe this one is my personal favorite, just because they have that spangling, they have that iridescence sort of look to them. And in this tank, you're actually going to see two different types. We've got the standard Pearl Gourami, which is the more silver, and then you see here we've also got a couple of gold Pearl Gouramis, and I think those are a little bit more unusual, not quite as common, not quite as popular, but we do have a couple of those mixed in here. These are awesome fish. They come from Thailand, Malaysia. Most of the ones that you'd find in a pet store are going to be commercially bred and raised, not usually a lot of wild caught Pearl Gouramis out there. Size, these are some of the larger typical store-bought gouramis. They're going to be somewhere between 4 to 5 inches. And one of the things I love about them is, even though they're on the larger side, they're one of the more docile gourami types. One of the issues, and I did a full species profile on all the different types of gouramis. I'll link that in the upper right hand corner, as well as in the description below. I've also talked about honey gouramis before. What I really like about this particular gourami is, unlike your typical golds, your opalines, your blue gouramis, which get to be about the same size, maybe just a little bit smaller, the Pearl Gouramis aren't nearly as aggressive. And as you can see, they can be kept in a group, where most other gourami types, including the dwarf gourami, a group is really not going to be advisable because there's going to be a lot of fighting. But these, the Pearl Gouramis and the honey gouramis, are two types where you can keep them together in groups, and they get along for the most part. They are relatively peaceful fish. Like I said, of all the gouramis that we've had, these and the honey gouramis are probably two of the most peaceful types. Coloring is absolutely magnificent, as we've already stated. The males get that more red, so as you go through this video and you see the ones that have more red in their throat area and their belly area, those are males. You'll also see on their fins they get more trailers than the females do. The females are going to be a little bit more rounded, while the males will be a little bit more slender. You can expect Pearl Gouramis to live somewhere in the neighborhood of 4, 5, 6 years. We had one in a 75-gallon that I know was at least 6 years old, so they can live for quite some time. Because these fish aren't very aggressive, we want to be a little bit thoughtful about the types of fish, about the types of tank mates that we keep with our Pearl Gouramis. Now again, in here, you're going to see some bristlenose plecos. You will see that Aquatics heculi. You're going to see some cherry bars, but your typical community fish will probably do pretty well with your gourami. For instance, we don't want to have any fin nippers in here, so no semi-aggressive to aggressive cichlids. That's not generally a good mix. Stay away from other gourami types. No dwarfs, no blues, opalines, golds. That's usually not going to be a good mix. The Pearl Gouramis will often get bullied by those fish. But if you want to keep some schooling fish like cherry barbs, some rasboras, some of the larger rasboras like the brilliant green rasbora, green cubitai, the pork chop rasbora, smaller tetras would work out really well, like your neon-sized tetras. And there's different types. You've got the standards, the golds, you've got the green neons. Ember tetras would work. If you're looking for something kind of cichlid-like, some of the smaller cichlids like your rams, your pistogramma, your crebensis would all potentially work. Cory cats would be a great addition to the bottom of the tank, as would be coolie loaches. So you do have some options there. A lot of your live bearers are fine. So your mollies, your guppies, your platies, your endlers, those would all work. Swordtails would most likely work out okay. When it comes to water parameters, here I have found them to be rather tolerant of a wide range of water parameters. Temperatures, you can keep them anywhere from around 75, 76, all the way up to 80. The tank that you're looking at here is right around 80 degrees. pH, somewhere between a 6.5 and an 8, I think is fairly safe. Our pH in our fish room ranges from an 8 to an 8.2. Like I said, we've had these fish in our fish room for many, many years, and they seem to do just fine. Water hardness, again, there's a lot of variation there as well, anywhere between 4 to 20 degrees on your GH and KH. You just want to make sure that your water quality is good. What that means is no ammonia, no nitrite, nitrates at 20 parts per million or less. If you don't know what that means, check out the video in the upper right hand corner where we go over the nitrogen cycle. It's a very helpful video, especially if you're a new fish keeper. When it comes to feeding your Pearl Gourami, really easy thing to do. They're not picky. We feed our fish North Fin flakes, North Fin pellets. So when it comes to prepared foods, we feed North Fin pretty much exclusively in our fish room. They also, believe it or not, will eat live baby brine. They like frozen brine shrimp, frozen bloodworms. They like the North Fin Bug Pro pellets. So there's a lot of different types of foods you could feed these fish. They're basically omnivores in nature anyway. Now, one of the places I'm going to probably vary, or probably going to be in a little bit of disagreement with the internet, is the minimum tank size. These are relatively large fish compared to other types of gouramis. They're one of the larger ones that you can buy, and therefore I don't think long term they are appropriate for a standard 20 gallon. They're not appropriate for a 20 long. I think a 29 gallon is really borderline. I would not personally keep this fish in anything less than a 40 breeder or larger. Like I said, this is a big group. They're in a 55 gallon, so it's a 4-foot tank, and I think that's worked out fairly well. They're not really active fish, but again, just because of their size and because the males can be a little bit more assertive than the females, I personally like to keep them in a 40 gallon or greater. Now, in terms of decorating the tank and how to set it up, you can see what we've done here. I really like this setup, other than the fact that there's some stuff floating around in the water, but we've got live plants, we've got rocks, we've got wood. You don't have to have live plants, but if you're going to include plants, a lot of times some plant cover near the top will make them feel more secure. However, be careful because this is an air-breathing labyrinth fish and they're going to need access to the top of the tank to gulp air. So that means don't put a lot of floating plants at the top. Like, if the whole top of the tank is covered in hornwort or guppy grass and they can't get to the top, that's not going to be a good situation for them. So just keep that in mind. I really like to keep these fish on a dark background and a dark substrate, just like you see here. The reason for that, we get a lot better looking fish when we do that, and so their colors really tend to stand out. I absolutely love that. So keep that in mind. They're gonna look a little bit nicer on darker substrates and darker backgrounds. The other thing to consider, filtration. Again, this is a gourami that's going to need access to the top of the tank, so it's not a great idea to be having really powerful power heads blowing the water all around the top or a very strong canister filter. It's going to stress out your gourami, so slower flow is going to be a better situation. Now, if you're interested in breeding these fish, well, you're going to need a pair, a male and a female. Again, the males are going to be a little bit thinner. They're going to have that red underneath their mouth and into their belly region, and they're going to have those trailers on their fins, especially as you can see right here. You see those trailers down below. Going to need a pair. They are going to breed like pretty much every other gourami, where the male is going to build a bubble nest. It's going to wrap itself around the female. The female will release the eggs. The male will put those eggs in the bubble nest. After that happens, you're going to want to remove the female because that's where sometimes aggression can happen between the male and female. It's going to take a few days for the eggs to hatch, but when they do, I would then remove the male from that tank so that the male doesn't eat the fry. The fry are going to be tiny, so they're most likely going to need infusoria at least for a couple of weeks, and then you can switch them to live baby brine, and then eventually you can switch them to crushed flake food. But that's pretty much how I would set up the breeding tank. Breeding tank, usually you're going to bring that water level down maybe 6 to 10 to 12 inches or so. Not a lot of height in the water because you want those fry to be able to easily get to the top of the tank. Very low flow is highly recommended as well. But this is an absolutely fantastic fish, and if you want more information on tank mates, check out the description below. We'll have a lot more information for you there. Highly recommend. If you have an opportunity to keep these fish, definitely do it. As long as you've got an adequate tank size, you don't have super aggressive fish in the tank or moderately aggressive fish, these can be a really nice addition and really quite a stunning centerpiece fish. If you've got experience with them, I'd love to hear from you down in the comments section below. What do you think of them? Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you in the next one.